Okay, let's get 16 to 20 done. So what we have here is working through demand curves and looking at optimal price and optimal quantity. So the first thing you need to remember, I'm sure you remember, is that typically when you're given a price equation, you'll know that this is always negative because the demand curve is downward sloping. So we know that's the case. And really the optimal point is where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Now you are given this in the exam that the marginal revenue is if you have P is equal to A minus BQ, the marginal revenue is A minus 2BQ. So we don't need to kind of prove it. We just need to almost accept it, so to speak. So therefore I know that my marginal revenue is equal to 55 minus 0.05 times 2 x1, which is 55 minus 0.1 x1. I know that. And I know that my marginal cost given to me is a variable cost. It's always a variable cost in these equations. So we are assuming that it's the same. There is no learning curve. It's just the same amount to make each extra unit. So the optimal price to charge. So first of all, I need to find the optimal quantity. And that is where 40 is equal to, where marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal to each other. So that means that 40 is equal to 55 minus 0.1 x1. Therefore, 0.1 x1 is equal to 55 minus 40. 0.1 x1 is equal to 15. X1 is equal to 150. So this is the optimal quantity. So now I found my optimal quantity. I go back into my equation, and therefore P1 is equal to 55 minus 0.05 times this optimal quantity. And when you do 0.05, when we do 0.05 times 150, we have 7.5. So P1 is equal to 55 minus 7.5, which brings us nicely to that. Now, let's move into the next one. We are now looking at P2, which is equal to 200 minus 0.2 x2. Now they're just asking for optimal quantity, which is slightly 1 or 2 steps before we get to finding optimal price. Again, here, marginal revenue, therefore, must be 200 minus 0.4 x2. Again, this is where marginal revenue is optimal quantity is where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Therefore, 40 is equal to 200 minus 0.4 x2. So in effect, I'm saying the 0.4 x2 is equal to 200 minus 40. 0.4 x2 is equal to 160. Therefore, x2 is equal to 160 divided by 0.4, which takes us nicely, if you like, into 160 divided by 0.4 is equal to 400, and that's, there we are, C. Then this question is talking about price discrimination. I've always thought, we can discuss price discrimination in a number of ways. The key point is you're selling the same product to completely different markets. So what you need to try and do as best as you can is it's like saying you're selling to students and to normal people, to students and working people, or to OAPs and normal aged. Forgive me, but you can see where I'm going. Two very different markets. So you need a way to kind of separate clearly. It's like the rail card is a good example. So you can see here, you can almost offer a same product, which is the rail line or the trains, to people in different classes by charging them same product, but just charging them different amounts. So you need a way to be able to verify, to check, like completely different markets. Just make sure you know they can't cross over, if you like. So we don't use price discrimination to discourage new entrants into a market. It's not really the tool. But the key point here is for it to be successful, we do need to rely on the continued existence of certain market conditions. So in this regard, we're really saying here that that these markets can't quite cross into each other. There's no way they can connect. Otherwise, then people would be able to buy the product at the lower price. So the whole idea is that that's kind of the theory, that we can somehow take advantage of the different market areas, of the different market segments. However that existence is held up legally, once you have a breakdown in that barrier, then you can't carry out market price discrimination. So it's only 2. That's correct. Now let's look at here. So some people are thinking of coming into the markets and adopting a penetration pricing strategy. So they're really wanting to go for your market to really. So chances are you're going to have to drop your price to match your competitors, and they can drive profit down margins to drive you out. They will drive these margins down, but to drive you out of the market might be interesting. I doubt it. I mean, you would already have been there for some time. It's not impossible, but it just says probably. So that maybe is the key word. Probably means there's a high chance they could drive you out. Unlikely. So definitely 1 is correct, but 2 is not, is unlikely. So 1 is definitely correct. So, I mean, again, this is probably an easy one. I'm sure you were happy with this idea of they're trying to get into some new markets and they want to charge low prices to gain rapid market share. That is penetration pricing straight away. And they want to charge high prices to skim off and get as much as they can. That is price skimming, if you like. So your answer here is A. Answer here is A. Good, great. And that's 16 to 20.